Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It's Jo here. I hope you're all well. If you're new here, I'm Jo. I do craft videos as well as Poundland hauls and my charity shop finds. So welcome to my channel. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you leave a comment, I will reply. And if you've not subscribed and you want to see more from me, then it'd be wonderful if you joined our family and friends. So yeah, for today's craft, I wanted to make some garden chairs and a garden table and an umbrella for a miniature diorama that I'm doing. So yeah, we'll just get straight into it. I'm starting off using 8 of the matchsticks. I get these from Poundland, and what I'm doing is I've left the matchsticks the length that they are, and I'm just cutting a 90-degree angle at the end of each matchstick so that it will lie at an angle against a wooden skewer that will be the center of our umbrella. So I'm just going to do all the angles at the top of the matchsticks. And then this is how I'm going to stick them around my wooden skewer. Again, I get these from supermarket or from Poundland. You get quite a lot in a pack. And now I'm just going to glue them about a centimetre from the top of the wooden skewer. I've left the pointy end at the top just to make it a lot easier to add the fabric in a little while. And I'm just going to use some hot glue and glue these matchsticks in place. I'm going to glue them into a cross first and then add the leftover matchsticks in between the sticks that are already in place. And here is what it looks like with the matchsticks glued in place. So to give the effect that it opens and closes, this umbrella isn't going to open and close. I've taken 8 matchsticks and measured them to 2 centimeters, and I've cut an angle at the top and the bottom 90 degrees. And I've done them so they're opposite each other so that these will fit in nice and neatly and glue flush with the matchsticks that we've glued in place already and the wooden skewer in the center. And I've done one for each of the matchsticks, and I'm just going to glue them at an angle like so. And here is what it looks like with all the matchsticks in place. So I've just pulled out my cocktail sticks, and I'm going to use this just to hold the umbrella frame in place while I paint it, and then it will stay there while it dries. But I'm just using some dark acrylic paint, and this is from Poundland, and I'm just going to paint the whole of the matchsticks inside and outside, making sure it's completely covered. And I'm going to do the wooden skewer about 3/4 of the way down. I'm going to leave the end because we're going to be cutting it off, but I'm just going to coat everything, make sure everything's coated, and I'll be back. And I only did 1 coat of the acrylic paint, and I'm happy with how it's looking. And now we can start to add the fabric. So I've picked some fabric that I want to use, and I've got a 6-inch saucer or plate, and I'm just going to trace around this as my template. And I want to make sure that the fabric is larger than the center of the umbrella. And I've just marked in the center with a pencil, and now I'm just going to push that onto the wooden skewer until it reaches the top of our matchsticks. And I wanted to make sure that the plate that I drew around was larger than my umbrella because I want it to be gathered in the center of each of the matchsticks. And now I'm just going to glue this in place. So I'm just using some Yoo-hoo glue, and I'm just going to place this down the matchsticks, leaving the amount of fabric I want in between each one, and then gluing the next matchstick in place. I'm going to continue to do this all the way around the umbrella and then let it dry. And here is where we're up to. So I've let it dry. I'm really happy with how it's looking, and now I'm just going to start to work on the top bit, and I just want to put a bead at the top to hide the wooden skewer. So I'm just using a Stanley knife to lightly scrape away some of the wooden skewer so that my bead will fit on, and I'm just going to place the bead on top once I've managed to cut the skewer to the width of the bead, and that's just going to sit at the top. I'm just going to cut off the length of the umbrella that we didn't paint, and I will probably make this shorter a little bit later on. But for now, I'm happy with how this is looking, and I'm going to start to work on the table. So for the top of the table, I'm using wooden stirrers, and I'm using 3 horizontal sticks and gluing them to 1 vertical stick. And I wanted to leave a couple of centimeters in between the 3 horizontal sticks. And this is going to form our base for our tabletop, and then I can carry on gluing wooden stirrers across, leaving a small gap in between each of them. And I just want to create enough that I can draw around the top of my cocktail stick pot, because this is the circumference of the table and the size that I want. And the reason I'm doing this and leaving gaps in the top of the table is because I don't own a drill. I have ordered one from China, but it said it's going to be a couple of months before it's delivered, which is fine. So this was a way of getting around that, and so I could pop my umbrella in the centre of the table. So like I said, I'm going to continue to glue them across until I have enough of them that I can draw around the top of the cocktail pot. And before I trace around it, I've noticed that actually one of the sticks is just a little bit out of the circumference of the circle. So I'm going to glue another stick in place. And now once I cut around my circle, it'll all stay glued together. So I'm just going to trace around that with a pencil, and then I'm just going to use a pair of scissors to cut out my tabletop. And this is why if I'm using anything that's not got a straight edge on, I prefer to use the stirrers instead of the popsicle sticks, because they're a lot easier to cut. You can just cut them with scissors, whereas the popsicle stick, I always have to use a craft knife. And then just to finish off the top of the table, I need to add another stirrer to the back in the centre so that the umbrella will stand up straight. And I'm just going to take a piece, leave a small gap in between the one that's already glued in place and the one that I'm gluing in. And then that will be the centre of the table. Just going to trim off the excess stirrer. And now my umbrella will sit nice and neatly in the centre of the tabletop. Like I said, if you've got a drill, you could put them together. You don't have to have gaps. Now to finish off the top, I'm just taking a piece of card. I'm measuring a 1/2 centimetre strip. I'm going to cut that out, and then I'm going to glue this around the edge of the tabletop just to finish it off. And this is where we're up to. So now I'm just taking a paper straw. I've cut it to about 5 centimeters or 6 centimeters, I think it was, but I shortened it in the end. And you want to have it the height that you want your table. So all I'm going to do now is glue this into the center and make sure that the opening, the hole of the straw is in the center of the table so that we can pop our umbrella into it from the other side. Just going to use a small tool to make sure that the glue is not in the center of the straw so we can still stick the umbrella in. And now I'm going to work on the base of the table. So for the length of the table, I'm taking a wooden stirrer. I'm measuring a piece at 6 centimeters and 2 at 2.5 centimeters. And in the one that's the 6 centimeters, I've just measured the center. And now I'm going to glue the two other pieces either side of that piece to form a cross. And then to finish off, I'm just gluing the straw to the centre of our cross and letting that dry. And then the last thing I'm going to do on the table, I've cut 4 pieces of matchsticks to 2 centimeters like I did in the umbrella. I'm going to cut a 90-degree angle at each end. And then these are going to be stuck in between the piece of wood or piece of stirrer at the bottom and the straw in the centre, just to give it a little bit more strength and make it stand up a little bit better. I'm going to do this using hot glue and a pair of tweezers, and then once they're dry and in place, I'm going to paint the whole of the table in the same brown that I did the centre of the umbrella and let it dry. Now this is where I actually glued the umbrella into the centre, but I ended up taking it out and making it a little bit shorter a bit later on. But the last thing I also want to do while I've got the paint out is just paint the bead at the top of the umbrella. And I'm doing it in the same brown that I've done the table and the centre. So now I'm going to start to make the chairs. I'm making 2 chairs. I've taken 8 matchsticks and measured them to 2.5 centimeters, and I'm going to glue these into 2 rectangles. I'm now going to glue wooden stirrers on the rectangles, and I'm going to do them the same way that we did the tabletop. I'm going to leave a small gap in between each of them, and I want to leave a gap at the back of the chair as well. Like so. And now I'm going to add wooden stirrers around the edges of the chair. I'm just going to hold them in place, mark off with a pencil, and then cut them to size and glue them in place. And now that they're in place, I'm going to add 2 matchsticks to the back of each chair. I did 4 centimeters. I'm just going to use some hot glue and make sure that they are as close to the edge as I can get. And then to finish the tops of the chairs, I'm just going to add 2 wooden stirrer pieces to the top, leaving a small gap in between the 2 of them. And then we can start to work on the legs. So for the legs, I want them to be in a crisscross pattern, and I'm going to be using 2 for each side of each chair, so 8 matchsticks. I've measured them to the length that I wanted, and I've cut an 90-degree angle at one end, the end that's going to be sitting on whatever surface it's on. And I'm just going to pop the glue at each side of the chair and glue them in place. And then I'm going to do the same for the other sides of the chairs. And then to finish off, I'm going to paint them brown, the same colour as the table and the umbrella. So to finish off the chairs, I want to add some cushions. So I'm using a washing up sponge, and I'm going to cut this to size. I'm just going to quickly measure the chair again, and it's now 3 centimeters by 2.5 centimeters. And this is because we added the wooden skewers around the outside. I'm just going to measure that and mark it with a pencil or pen, and then cut that out using scissors. And because it's a lot thicker than what I want it to be, I'm going to cut this in 2. and it's still a little bit thicker than what I want, so I'm going to start to trim this down till I get the thickness that I want. And I'm going to do exactly the same with the other one. And then I don't know what happened to this bit of the video, but basically all I did after this was I just covered it in the same green fabric that I did the umbrella, and then glued them to the chairs. And here they are. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. It was really challenging to figure out how to do the umbrella, but I'm so glad and I'm so happy that I gave it a go. And this is what it looks like from underneath. But like I said, this is going to be part of a larger diorama, and I'm really happy that I've made that. I'm probably going to add some bits to the table, like some drinks and a book and different things once I do the diorama. But until then, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you on Wednesday. So take care. Bye for now.